So last night I was reading Divine Audacity, which is about the 12 powers, which I'll explain in a minute. I was just reading the chapter on will, which is what the talk is about today, and I read the first sentence, and I kind of laughed out loud, and then I read it out loud because my dear husband was sitting there, and, well, this is what the sentence says, and you see why it was worth reading out loud. Have you noticed that human willpower is insufficient to carry us from an idea to its fulfillment? And he had one of those, like, yeah moments. Let me share with you the whole paragraph, because it's pretty great. Have you noticed that human willpower is insufficient to carry us from an idea to its fulfillment? Personal or human will is behind our New Year's resolutions that dissipate after a few weeks, or the need for course corrections after making choices we regret. Our brains favor survival and safety, which means we tend to exert our will in the direction of self-preservation. Whoa. I mean, Linda, who wrote this book, she just like threw it all out there in the first 3 sentences, didn't she? So, today the talk is about will, which is one of our 12 powers. The 12 powers are aspects of our divine nature, not separate from, but like a prism separates out light into the rainbow, both visible and invisible light. The 12 powers are that spread out so we can sort of look at it and chew on it in separate little pieces instead of trying to do it all in one. So the will is one of the aspects of our divine nature, and it's symbolized by the color silver. Oh, makes sense now, right? So spiritual will is our power of choice, commitment, and willingness. So a couple weeks ago, we were talking about understanding, and so I'm gonna go back and say, so if understanding is one of the other 12 powers, is having the map, the high version of the map and the zoomed in street level version of the map. Wisdom is figuring out how to get from here to there. Will is knowing where you're trying to go and then going there, that you actually want to go there. It's like the getting going and then keep driving. And then the zeal is kind of that fire, that gas in the engine that helps us keep going. Because, as Linda said, sheer will is not enough to keep the ball rolling. Because we get caught up in all this other stuff, right? And so, because that sentence was so fabulous, Bill actually read the whole chapter and we had this great talk about it. It's actually a really great way to get ready for a talk, is to talk about it with somebody. Oh. And so the last time I talked about will, we talked about the difference between spiritual will, or talked about that kind of, people like to say, oh, it's God's will as an excuse for stuff, like usually bad stuff, sometimes good stuff, but usually we hear, oh, it's God's will, and an excuse for stuff we don't like to have happen. And so that's a misuse of I believe, because that sounds sort of like there's a God outside of me that's like playing the cards and manipulating things. And the way that Unity uses God's will is that the will is for us to express the most of our divine nature. That we all have that divine nature, and that the will of quote-unquote God, the spiritual will, is for us to express the most of that. So whatever is required or whatever we need to do to express the best version of ourselves, that is the will of the divine. which is in all of us. Okay, so now that we backtrack to that. Now, so this is this really brilliant sentence that I said last night that I made Phil stop talking so I could write down. Being willing is being stubborn with the part of us that wants to be lazy. Will is being stubborn with the part of us that wants to be lazy. But being open to the next door that's opening. Right? So when we are using our power of will, we are saying no to the lazy part that says, well, I don't have to go to the gym today. Or, you know, I know that I want to practice learning, fill in the blank, whatever it is you're saying that you want to practice, but I'll do that tomorrow. Or, well, yeah, I know that I was gonna eat healthy, but ice cream. Does any of those sentences sound familiar to anybody?
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay. Okay, so we all know what happens when kind of that, so there's that kind of idea of willpower to not go with that, right? So we have that use of willpower and the idea that we're going to be stronger over our kind of, not that we're going to judge, but we'll call them our lesser desires, or our less divine ideas, or less divine idea version of ourselves. So we need to use our will to be kind of stubborn in that way, right? To say, we're going to stay the course. We're going to stick with what we know is our highest truth. We know our highest truth is to probably not have the ice cream. We know our highest truth is probably to go to the gym, unless taking care of ourselves, it means not. But usually it does mean going, or climbing the mountain. And we know that our higher truth is probably spending the time to connect with people we care about and to learn the thing that we're excited about learning. We know that that's our highest truth to do those things, but somehow we still don't do it. We're so funny, aren't we? Like staying the status quo is so comfortable and safe that we're like, okay, well that's safe. Doing something new is not. So, we're so funny. Anyway, so we gotta stay stubborn. We use our will to be stubborn against the not so divine version of ourselves. But that doesn't mean that when we get a new door opening, we say, well, I decided that this is where I'm going, and this is where I'm going, period. There is no diversion from the track, because that's not how life works, right? When we start saying, yes, I'm going to go down this track, and I'm going to do this thing, and I'm going to fulfill what I know is mine to do, more doors open up. Doors that weren't part of our original plan. And so that's where, so will as being stubborn to the less divine version of ourselves. And then being willing is also being able to be in the place of discernment, because none of our 12 powers work by themselves. So we still use our wisdom, and we use our understanding, and we use all of the other parts, and we use our imagination to see, where could we go? What could we do? We say, oh, will. Okay, I am willing to see that there's another possibility to the solution or to the intention that I had. In the book, Reverend Linda says she had thought that she was going to live in this ashram for the rest of her life, because that was what she thought was the way to fulfill the desire that she had for her life, or the vision she had for her life. But then she realized that living a spiritual life could look a lot of different ways. And that what was truly calling her was to go and get married to the man that she loved, and that she could live a spiritual life other places than at the ashram. But when we close the door because we decided that this is the only way it's going to be, then we're not being willing, we're being willful. Oh, oops. It's a very fine line. It's a very, very fine line. And the problem is often we don't take the time to discern which side of the line we're on. And that's where, of course, our spiritual practice and things like that come in to play. Because when we take the time for meditation, when we take the time for having real conversations with the people who know us and can support us and are willing for us to be something new and bright and shiny. It's really important to have kind of people in your life who are like, yeah, you want to try the new thing? Try the new thing. Let's do the new thing. You want to learn the new thing? We know that you can be even more. Who is your divine nature calling you to be? That's a great question, isn't it? Who's your divine nature calling you to be? I'm willing to find out. I'm willing to find out what my next adventure could look like at any given time. And it could be a little bit more than where you're at, or it could be a big thing more. I don't know. Because all those little things end up being a big thing at the end. Right? They say Rome wasn't built in a day, right? Well, neither was us coming out to our divine being, right? I mean, we hear the big stories of like Buddha, who just sat under a tree until he became enlightened. Well, even that happened one day at a time, right? I mean, he sat there and sat there and sat there until he finally like woke up, right? But it's not like he didn't sit there and sit there and sit there first. So being willing and using our power of will is the part where we sit there and sit there and sit there. Even when we're like, well, but I could go do the thing instead. I could go do the other thing. The thing that I usually do. Whatever that is. And you know, it's not a failure when we do the thing that's less than our divine nature. That's just life. Right? So nobody's judging and getting caught up in all of that doesn't really help us any. It might be helpful to say, what did cause me to do that? Because that might help us realize there's a trigger. In which case we might be able to diffuse the trigger. That's a really helpful thing to do. But all that really matters is that we get back on the horse. Or we get back on track. Or we use that energy of will to say, I'm willing to do it again. I'm willing to do better. Tomorrow I'll do it again. One day at a time. It's not about something outside of me telling me what to do. It's about me becoming awake to what my truth of my being is and actually doing something about it. We have to get out of our own way to be the light. That's what it all comes down to, right? We have to get out of we have to be stubborn with ourselves enough so that we can be the best of who we've come here to be. Because we got all these patterns, all these habits. Oh Lord, don't I have them? I tell you, I was so productive the year that I quit Facebook for Lent. Oh. You don't see me doing that now. So, when we think about the power of will, people get caught up, that whole willing, willful thing. They get caught up in what is God's will, because that, once again, sounds like that someone outside of us telling us what we have to do. And usually people who show up in a Unity church aren't interested in someone outside of them telling them what to do. It's been my experience. We're not those type of folks. We're kind of I like to be free and do what I want to do type of folks. Sometimes you might even call us a little stubborn. At least me. So what I tell people is use that stubbornness that you have about not falling into what anybody else wants you to do on yourself. And instead of calling it stubbornness, you can call it steadfastness. Oh yeah, you like that word better. Okay, so let's use that word. So we're going to be steadfast to what is our truth and who we've come here to be. See, it's the same word. I mean, it's a different word, but it means the same thing, right? But all those connotations, right? So we got to use that steadfastness that we have to say, I'm not going to fall, not only am I not going to fall into the box that other people in the world want to put me into, but I'm not going to fall in the box that I'm putting myself into. Whoa. What about that box? Because that's the most important box, right? Because that's the one you can do something about. So, use your power of will to be willing to see and willing to act on who you've truly come here to be and what is truly yours to do. Being open to what the next door might be and where the next door might lead you. And staying true to the course that will lead you to being the best expression of the light of the divine that you can be.